All right, let me recap again because I just started the recorder. So I'm the moderator for this session for Corey Nicoletti's The Sky's the Limit. Corey is the Educational Technology Specialist at Marist College. She focuses on technology integrations, faculty support, best practices, and instructional design using Sakai. She's a light bulb thinker who loves coming up with new ideas and helping faculty navigate and master the learning management system. Corey works closely with an instructional designer and Sakai developers to offer regular workshops and training or one-on-one assistance while working to optimize the use of Sakai for faculty and students alike. So I will turn it over to Corey, and she can take it away.
Thank you so much. All right, so with our recent upgrade to Sakai 11, I must say I share a office. I know many people know her with Louisa Lee, and it's, for those of you that know her will know that this is funny. She and I at this point are pretty much siblings. We finish each other's sentences and we read each other's minds. So the two of us being in an office together, she is an instructional designer and I as an educational technology specialist, are definitely a dynamic and dangerous duo. So that being said, we have worked with our faculty since upgrading to Sakai 11. We upgraded on July 30th to really push the limits of the lessons tool. So certain things and certain pain points with the upgrade were certain things that were depreciated and discontinued tools. So some things I have to share with you today is we have a wiki replacement solution. We also have some other unique uses that I have to share with you, and I hope that many of you have some to share as well. So first and foremost, I have a little screenshot of this. And I just kind of kept this simple to point out where the settings are. So for those of you who are not familiar with lessons, I can always do a more thorough and in-depth walkthrough for you. But the wiki replacement, what we've done is we created a class group under site info for manage groups and added every single student to the group. Now, it seems counterproductive, but if you go to the lessons tool and add student pages, in the settings for student pages is a little checkbox that is your new best friend, and that is our student pages will be associated with groups rather than individuals. So I created a group called Class Wiki. I added student pages to a lessons tool. I then set that student pages to be associated with a group, which means that once one person in the group sets it and creates it, it is created. We then went ahead and created a page. We then ended up with a student page that is a wiki where all students have the same exact access as they would if they were to have their own personal student pages. So the best part about that is a lot of faculty who called us and asked us where the wiki tool was, and when we told them it was gone, instead of them crying a little bit, we were able to say, wait till you see what you can do compared to the wiki, because other faculty to have to teach their students how to use the old wiki tool and practically code was definitely a headache. So this is definitely one of our favorite new features of the lessons tool. And I'm keeping an eye on questions. It looks like I haven't had any come in yet. Everyone can see my Facebook notifications. All right, so next piece that we did is we finagled how to set individual items as invisible. This again is a group manipulation. We had a lot of faculty say, well, previously I could not release individual items. And at this point, faculty said, well, you know, I don't want to hide top level pages. I don't want to have to do that. I don't want to have to set all the dates. I don't want to have to pick and choose on a calendar the release date for Tuesday and the close date for Friday, or, you know, whatever they're doing. So again, we created, here's a little snapshot here of our group titles, Class Wiki and Invisible. So you'll notice that the invisible group is called Invisible and there's nobody in it. So what I've done is I then released individual items, and in this demo we have a subpage as well as a test and quiz that I simply edited the permissions and released those items to the group invisible, which is empty. Therefore, only those in the invisible group, nobody, could see these items. So, make page only. So the question that came in was, does this make the page only visible to individual students rather than the whole site? Was that regarding the wiki or the single invisible items? Oh, the wiki page. So the wiki page.
Make sure to read the question off for the recording, please, just so people will know later what you're talking about.
Yes, sorry, I thought I did. Okay, so the question was, does this make the page only visible to individual students rather than the whole site? And that's in regards to the wiki page. So great question. You can actually do both. So what I did is originally the group wiki was released to the way most of our faculty had used it was released to the entire class, and all the students could go in and edit the page and make changes. What this allows you to do is do an entire student page, essentially a condensed lesson page, so the permissions and the actual options for what they can do within that page are limited. It then sets that page up only specifically to that group. So that's how we then manipulated items to also be set to invisible. It was released only to that group, which hence was nobody, therefore nobody could see it. So there's a few different things going on there. So we were able to manipulate those group permissions. Another example of how we used this concept, both the wiki replacement and invisible items, was we worked closely with our special services department this semester. And what they do is they have students who are provided with tutors and note takers. And the real hurdle here was, okay, how do we create note pages for these students to hand their notes off to others without knowing who that person was, because it was a FERPA violation of who those students were that were entitled to these services. So what we actually did is we manipulated yet again the student pages settings. We released it specific to a group with both the note taker and the note receiver in the group. We managed the settings to this item to release it only to that group. And there's also a checkbox in student pages to set that as anonymous. So the note takers were able to create anonymous pages, upload their notes, and then the student who needed to retrieve those notes simply went in, clicked on the appropriate class, and clicked to download those resources. So what that allowed us to do was we removed the legwork that our special services employees were doing here. They were scanning in documents. They were sending emails upon emails. They were having emails come in that had 5 attachments, and so it really minimized the legwork that they themselves were doing between the students to allow that to happen. So those are the primary examples that I brought forward for the birds of the feather conversation in regards to how we're manipulating our lessons here. So in reaching out to my fellow birds, I'm curious as to how others might be using this, or if anyone can see advantages to this, manipulating these items within lessons tools. I do have one other thing to show as well that I don't have a slide for. Let me pull that up. So, all right. So another manipulation of the lessons tool that we did, since no one's chomping at the bit here to share some items, is we also used Font Awesome across the board in lessons, and I really love it. For my students, the other day, I actually had to cancel class due to a family emergency. And what I did is I had to add an assignment here. Now, when you look at this page, you know, these things, my students were like, oh, well, which one is it? You know, which one have I clicked? Which one have I entered? You know, so there's some advantages to the clean format and others not. So across the board, I used Font Awesome. Here's an example for you here. To follow a red light, green light format for my students. So you'll see my spinning red star using Font Awesome is to highlight mandatory readings. My yellow spinning star is supplemental. So of course, you know, that slow down, but you don't have to stop here. And then my green submission is the assignment submission at the bottom. So green means go, submit your assignment here. Red means stop, you have to read these items. Yellow means stroll, browse, peruse, take a peek at these items. So the great thing about Font Awesome is, as I mentioned, canceling class the other day, I came down to my assignment and I clicked to add, and I clicked add text. Go ahead and hop into Font Awesome. And I really wanted to say, hey guys, this is what you need. So I selected my arrow. I wanted to make it bright, bright red so you can't miss it. I then said, all right, let's make this ginormous. And I didn't want this one to spin because it needs to actually point to something. So there's my big red arrow. I clicked save, and there it was. I told my students they couldn't miss it, and that the arrow was literally pointing to what they were doing. So Terry mentioned, just a heads up to accessibility standards, you might want to check whether some of these features pass the visibility and flashing standards. Learning requirements should not be dependent on color, and watch for flashing elements. Terry, absolutely correct, especially if you have students who are colorblind, or perhaps the animations can be distracting or cause issues depending on what perhaps their disability might be or whatnot like that. So definitely an excellent comment about how that might impact our students coming through the door. Absolutely. So thank you, Terry. So definitely tread lightly when it comes to flashing and spinning and colors. I'm going to go ahead and delete that so my students don't get confused. So we have some great feedback. Love it. Wow. Loved the animated icons in the chat. Okay, so we had a question for the class wiki. Can a class wiki be rolled over to future semesters in order to be built upon? We have some wikis that are a few semesters old and the faculty like them to be used each semester with new students contributing. That's a great question, and I haven't tried it. I don't know. It is student content. So typically when we roll over forums and whatnot, student posts and whatnot are lost, and we want those to be lost because we want it to be redone and whatnot like that. So that's a really excellent question that I don't know the answer to, Julie, but I'm definitely going to check that out today as I make note. Okay, so someone else said, I guess you must have introduced the color coding scheme at the beginning. Yes, so my course is a face-to-face course. So the first day of class, I did a very generic walkthrough of the course, told them how I was going to be hosting things, how I was going to be showing things. I did previously hide my assignments and tests and quizzes. But in the spur of a moment within class, my students needed to access them. So I actually made them visible just the other day as we were talking about how in iLearn we can finagle student access. Okay, and my chat box jumped, so bear with me. Could you please switch to student view so we can see the page without editing tools? Yes, sorry, thank you. It's one of those things where I totally meant to do that, but here we go. So there we go. So there's that page with my red, yellow, and green. And then if we go back, And I deleted that red arrow, but you saw the spinning there. So I think that's what you were looking for, Tiffany. Switching to the student view so you could see the page without the editing tools. Great. So Terry said, identities can be maintained in project sites for many years. Course sites are term delineated and rosters drop. So that makes sense. So in other words, keeping a long-term wiki in a project site is doable, which you can absolutely create a project site for your students and add them to the project site to build and move that wiki on with your students. So that's a great idea. And I forgot to unplug my phone today, so I apologize that is ringing in my background. Let me just scroll up and okay. And now that person is calling Louise's phone. All right, so let's see. Someone else said, I could see group pages viewable by the whole site or able to be hidden. It would be a page where a defined group could collaborate and add content. Yes, so the idea of the group pages were for that a whole group could do it. So of course you could do it specific to smaller groups as well. For example, I do have my students in a class who are going to be working on designing informational pages for their peers. So I'll be setting up the student pages, but instead of each individual student, I'll set them up by group and have each student create their own group page by their project title. The question was, is Font Awesome standard in Sakai 11, or is it something that Marist added to your instance? That's a really great question. I don't know the answer to that. I'm more of a user than a doer over here. So, you know, our web services manages a lot of that on the background. So we had someone respond that I think it's standard. Someone else said, I don't think it's standard. Someone else said standard. So 2 for 1 on standard. So, and another great comment about the wiki tool, and this is definitely something to caution your students about, being aware that when you make student pages available to a group, anyone can delete the page by mistake. So you'll have to explicitly tell your students, hey, don't click the delete button. Yes, it really deletes the page. Okay, so it does look like Font Awesome is in Sakai 11 by default. Fabulous. Thanks, Wilma. I appreciate it. Okay, in the screenshot that says week 1, I can see check boxes. Are these interactive that the student can check? Is it possible to create a checkable list? That's a really great question. So in our version of Sakai 11, no. Mine were, let me go back a little bit. Are you talking about my to-do list? So the question was, the screenshot that says week 1, the check boxes. Excellent. So no, these check boxes I used in Font Awesome. So currently our version of Sakai does not have a checkbox function. However, I do know that, yep, so Lucy just said exactly what I was thinking. It is coming. So I forget who, and I do remember that somebody presented at Apereo this year about the checklist tool, being able to finagle that into your course. And I actually believe someone had done it prior to this. So Wilma just said, yes, it's on Trunk Master now if you want to try out the checklist. So there you go. So mine was more of a visual for my students to say, hey, make sure you did all these things. And I filled in the checks for them just so that it was you know, to mentally have them check off that list of sorts. So, and the to-do post-it is actually just a little embedded image of a post-it note that I put into my course. So Font Awesome for the actual check boxes, and the little to-do post-it was an embedded image. Are there any other questions or anything else that I can demo, whether it's Font Awesome, anything for our students going on here? I'll go ahead and exit the student view there. Yeah, so Tiffany, that's a great comment. So you can make required lesson items and it will automatically check when the students complete them. So that does work across the board. We actually have that. That was something that actually existed in 2.9 as well. So let me just point out again where the Font Awesome is. So let me just go ahead and open anything. I'll just go ahead and add some text. So Font Awesome is right here. It's this little flag on the second row all the way to the right, and that is your Font Awesome. Now, the only catch and trouble with Font Awesome is that, at least from what I see, is that if I do select an item and put it in, here it is. It's its own little individual character, and you're only entering one little icon at a time. So that can get a little tricky in particular. So in regards to making items required, if you were to, within settings, click require this item, it'll then give your students, let me go ahead and swap back to my student view for you. You'll see down here, technology in our lives. There's a little checkbox. So once items are required, it'll present a little asterisk for students who have not yet clicked on them and a green checkbox once they have. So that works. This is specifically a subpage, but it works for individual items as well. Awesome. So it looks like it was confirmed that Oxford's version of Sakai 11 does have Font Awesome. Would it be redundant if I said, hey, that's awesome? So, let's see. The checklist feature. So Laura commented the checklist feature needs to be manually checked by students. It doesn't actually check off items as they complete the item, which I kind of like. You know, the required item here does actually check it off, but unfortunately that's specific to if they click on it. So if you have a student who says, oh, okay, what do I have to read tonight? They click on that subpage and essentially they opened it. It's now been checked whether or not they actually read it. So I really love that the checklist feature that's up and coming requires students to actually check it themselves. So what that allows them to do is physically, with their mouse, click the checkbox to confirm, yes, this is done. So I actually prefer that. So that's a great note, Laura, specifically to that, the manual checking the checkbox. I think it's more of a, you know, it's kind of like doing a to-do list and actually physically crossing out our items on our checklist instead of having it marked off for us. So definitely a huge advantage to that checklist feature. So Laura also said, I like the fact that the checklist feature has to be checked because it's a nice follow through for students. Absolutely. It's a good summary at the end of a lesson. They can say, yep, this is done. I did it. I'm all done with that. So by all means, I don't mind any additional comments. So we have some other unique features of the lessons tool that I wanted to share. So just bear with me a moment. Okay. So one of the things we recently did is we have our, and I don't think I'm going to group in it, but give me a second. So another thing we recently put into the lessons tool was, and I see another question just came in, so I'll touch on that in a second, is we have the online writing center. So just kind of a cool way of how we have a non-class using the lessons page. So what we're doing is we have students who can sign up for a peer tutor and a proofreading of their sessions. So what we have in this site, you'll see the items are reduced on the left. The idea is the student comes to the Dropbox to drop off their file for their proofreader, their tutor. They are able to click to make an appointment, and then they come on into our online tutoring sessions, and here's the times that'll be available for them. So this is actually a specific initiative to our online students who we want to offer them the same resources that we have on campus to those who cannot actually come to campus. So that's just another initiative we had moving forward with the Writing Center using the lessons tool. So a question was, can anyone talk about the accessibility of Font Awesome? And Terry commented that flashing elements are discouraged and color checking should be done. So I had a little fun with the spinning elements, but I can definitely understand how flashing and spinning can be disruptive. I know I had just to give specifics, I actually had a good friend of mine in high school who, I believe it's epilepsy, that my phone was flashing because I set it for accessibility to flash to go if I'm getting a phone call, and it can apparently trigger a seizure. That's my understanding, but don't quote me on that. So I definitely understand the concerns with flashing elements and the impact they can have on the students, especially if you don't know. Yes, thank you. So seizures and migraines can be triggered. Thank you for confirming. Fantastic. Yep. So photosensitivity, great. So so that's a good question. The flashing is bad, but is spinning okay? So I definitely had some fun, and I thought it was really awesome that I could set things to spin, and definitely be aware of what kind of students you have coming in. So Terry commented, so someone asked, flashing bad, spinning, is it okay? And Terry commented, don't know if WCAG addresses the spinning. Okay, so another question that came in was exporting and importing of lessons. Is this a functionality still active in Sakai 11? Yes, you can definitely import from site, and it will import lessons across the board. I don't know if you had specific issues or anything specific to that on a technical level in regards to that question for exporting and importing. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but yes, you can import from site and just import lessons. The question we had earlier was, what about student pages? And because it is student content, that will not be imported, it's my understanding. So Dr. Chuck said, also for limited vision folks, there's a way to provide some alternate text. Our wizard does not have a place to specify the alternate text, but it should be easy to add. Great, so definitely keeping in mind alternative text for those with vision, limited vision. Red, yellow, green star. Oh, so the question is, if red, yellow, and green stars are used, as I displayed here in my course, can the screen reader distinguish them? That's a really good question. I don't know. I haven't tried it. I'm going to follow up with that. And then Terry provided the link for the contrast checker. Thank you so much, Terry. Another comment was you could switch the source mode to add the title attribute. And then you would have alternative text. Great. Okay. Another comment, adding alt text would be great. It would actually be awesome. Just all about using the word awesome today. Okay, so maybe I can check this in front of everybody. It's my understanding that Font Awesome automatically includes alt text handling. So let me hop into one of my demo sites. Okay, I don't necessarily see a part to type it in. Oh, awesome. So in the chat, we have the Font Awesome website / accessibility. So fontawesome.io/accessibility. And there was a comment that I don't think screen readers will read icons without alternative text. That was my assumption as well, Terry, that if there is not alternative text. Okay, so let's see. So Dr. Chuck said, if I go ahead and put in Font Awesome, and there's my little Android dude. If you switch to source, you can then edit the source code. Excellent. So, so he put in the chat what shows up by default. So it's FA for Font Awesome. And then he provided an example with having title equals, and then in quotes, what you want the alternative text to say. Fantastic. Great solution to using Font Awesome and making it accessible. And there is another note that screen readers ignore images with no alternative text. Okay, so there was a question that if Sakai is using the ARIA label attributes, is Sakai using the ARIA label attributes when it uses the Font Awesome icon? I don't know. Oh, okay, cool. So the answer was, I don't think Sakai is doing anything automatically in this area, but it could. Fantastic. So we had some thanks. Chuck answered. Thanks, Chuck. You're awesome. See what I did there? You're awesome. Awesome, and we had a wonderful comment about, with all of these answers, to feel Font Awesome with their faculty. Great. Great, so the great thing is, and that editing the source code is a solution until it is fixed to be automatic. So you can edit the source to edit the alternative text until it is fixed to be automatic in there. Fantastic. Some really good brainstorming and teamwork going on there. Let's make it auto as soon as possible. I definitely can relate, having to tell faculty. We actually have faculty who, in Sakai 2.9, with their lessons pages, we encourage them to add banners across their site. So to kind of, spiff up their sites, a nice, easy way to do it. And the easiest way to have them do it was to go into source, to copy and paste the source code that pointed back to the image in their site that was in a table with a red background from Arist. And that was definitely not, that definitely raised a few eyebrows for our faculty there. So definitely having it go automatic would be excellent. So another comment about if we make it automatic for that alternative text is just to keep in mind that it won't go back and change old pages, that the fix would be at the moment of insertion. So fabulous. So until it's automatic, we will need to fix it manually where it is important. So definitely be cognitive of the students that are coming into your classroom. Especially, I know here, many of, in my experience, I actually had students who did not self-identify ever, or didn't self-identify till halfway through my class, or until 2 hours before they had to take a test. So definitely be cognitive of doing that. And if it's something you make a habit of doing once, I do believe that would come over when you import this content from lessons, that the alternative text would obviously stick. So definitely a great solution and a proactive response instead of reactive.
Looks like we have about 5 minutes left, so if there's any other questions, feel free to post them in the chat. Okay, it looks like there's no new questions, but that was some great discussion regarding accessibility. And thank you, Corey, for a very awesome presentation. You did a great job and showed us some really neat things with lessons. So I'm sure everybody's going to be excited to go back and play with some of the new functionality that's available in Sakai 11. So
absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you, Wilma.
thanks, everyone, and hopefully I'll see you in the next session.